obviously we're in L2, right? And the topic du jour these days is ETH, catching the institutional bid. How ETH is going to be that ultimately the computing layer or the settlement layer for stablecoins, and TradFi will buy into that. I think there's a huge narrative and tailwind there that we will stand to benefit from as Mantle, as an L2, that other folks won't be able to, right? So if you akin it to, look, if NVIDIA is the infrastructure and OpenAI is the application on top, right? In crypto, what? ETH is the infrastructure, and this new ecosystem of Bybit plus Mantle plus UR and the ecosystem products feels like the open AI ecosystem that's burgeoning on top as well.
Welcome to the Edge Podcast. I'm DeFi Dad here with Nomadic. Today's show features a long overdue catch-up with the product lead and global head of strategy at Mantle. Previously, we've covered different products developed by the team at Mantle, including the ETH liquid staking protocol MEF. I'm curious, Nomadic, what did you think was the most interesting part of the interview today?
Yeah, I think just catching up on the umbrella of products that sit under Mantle, like some that I didn't even really have a lot of insight into, but probably the biggest thing was just this like intentional lean-in partnership that Bybit's now forming with Mantle. There's always been a tie with Bybit and Mantle, but I think they're making it something more along the lines of how Binance is partnered with BNB, and how the Hyperliquid Assistance Fund kind of leans into the HYPE token. So we kind of talked through just what this means, and TLDR, I think it's going to be potential for massive buy pressure on the MNT token, as well as just a much more formal partnership and better distribution for Mantle and the Mantle suite of products.
Yeah, it feels like we're in the very early innings of that partnership. If you compare what Binance has done with BNB, but in this case, we have a much more mature centralized exchange. I think the number 2 centralized exchange in the world already established. Plus you have a rather mature Ethereum L2 in Mantle. So combining those efforts makes a lot of sense. I think it's going to be a huge unlock for bringing more folks on chain with Mantle, especially with the distribution of Bybit.
I also feel like we can't get through any podcast these days without talking about DATs, digital asset treasury companies. Tim did a talk at Cannes around DATs and what led to his crazy bullish 80K ETH prediction. We get into kind of all the inner workings of how he arrives at that number.
To their credit, Mantle has always been an L2 that has really leaned into the idea of holding a treasury denominated in ETH. So there hasn't been any other announcement of further intentions to like accumulate more ETH or to even launch their own digital asset treasury. But I do acknowledge that they are ranked number 8 on the strategic ETH reserve.xyz dashboard. And so there's definitely more detail there that we dig into with the team. So before we get started, just a reminder, you can subscribe at the-edge.xyz. That's the best place to get real-time updates on the Edge newsletter and any new Edge podcast episodes. You can also subscribe at our link tree. It's edge_pod, which is where you can subscribe to the Edge podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. And then just a quick shout out to all of our sponsors. They are the ones that make our content possible. All of our content is free and ungated. And again, that's all due in part to the sponsors behind us. So folks like REDSTONE, TOROS Finance, Maple Finance, Spark, and lots more. So be sure to check them out in the show notes. Go exploring, click on the links, and get to learn about all the cool DeFi products they're developing. Otherwise, we hope you enjoy the episode. Grow wealth exponentially. With TOROS leveraged tokens, when the market moves in your favor, your gains become parabolic. They're built to ride trends, auto-compounding profits. With TOROS, it's simple. Pick a vault, deposit, and your exposure is multiplied, maintained, and protected automatically against liquidations. TOROS reduces risk and keeps you in the market ready for the rebound. When markets dip, the vaults auto-adjust, softening losses and preserving your position. Just pick a token to multiply your returns. TOROS Finance, exponential gains with leveraged tokens. To learn more, go to toros.finance. REDSTONE is building the Oracle backbone to unlock real-world finance on-chain and next-gen DeFi. With modular gas-efficient feeds across over 110 chains, trusted by 170 clients, supporting over 1,300 assets, from value-accruing stablecoins, liquid staking and restaking tokens, to treasuries, private credit, and commodity tokens, REDSTONE delivers accurate real-time data where it matters most. The biggest platforms and protocols in DeFi today choose REDSTONE oracles, such as Athena, Securitize, BlackRock Biddle, Pendle, Spark, and Maple Finance. If you're building the future of finance on-chain, you need REDSTONE's leading modular blockchain oracle layer. To learn more, go to redstone.finance, and thanks to REDSTONE for supporting us here at the Edge Podcast and Edge Newsletter. Maple Finance is one of my favorite products in DeFi. It is a gateway to sustainable real yield powered by over $1 billion in AUM across USDC and BTC products. And now with SYRUPUSDC by Maple, anyone can earn institutional-grade yield. Learn more at syrup.fi, and thanks to Maple for supporting us here at the Edge Podcast and Edge Newsletter. FALCON Finance, the team behind the fastest-growing synthetic dollar, with institutional yields that are competitive and sustainable, offering yield optimized across your favorite DeFi protocols. Point season is now live. Learn more at falcon.finance. All right, let's introduce YZ, product lead at Mantle, and Tim, global head of strategy. Guys, welcome to the Edge Podcast. How are you doing?
We're doing fantastic, even though we are in the dead of night here. But a big fan of your work, and thank you for having us on your show.
So we're excited to get right into what differentiates Mantle as an L2 and what differentiates the Mantle suite of products as a DeFi super app. There's been a massive partnership announced with Bybit that we're going to get right into. But first, let's go ahead and really talk more about the work that the two of you have been doing at Mantle. So maybe, Tim, why don't you kick us off with more about your role and your background at Mantle?
Yes, absolutely. So I currently lead global strategy at Mantle. And let me talk about how that translates to what Mantle looks like at the org level. Taking a step back, I've had the pleasure to join, obviously at the very beginning, but along the journey of Mantle. So 4 or 5 years ago, we got started as a DAO, and we looked around when L2s were becoming hot and realized, okay, there's a merit in building a strong L2. And so we built the Mantle network. Along that way, as proof of stake got set up within the Ethereum protocol and became a standard, we saw how players were building innovative mechanisms with staking, and we decided to build an ETH, which is now sitting at $1.5 billion in terms of TVL. Huge success. And afterwards, our team looked around and said, okay, what else is interesting? We like this thing called Bitcoin. So why don't we compete with Wrap Bitcoin and create a product called Function BTC, which is now sitting at similarly $1.5 billion in TVL, right? And if we really zoom out, what have we built? Essentially, we built these liquidity layers, right? We've had the Mantle network where transactions settle. We have the liquidity layers. And more recently, over the past year to date, we took a larger view on the evolution of Mantle, right? I think our goal is how do we position Mantle to onboard the next billion users, onboard the next $1 trillion of capital? Part of that is building products that people understand. And I think where we are today in the growth curve or adoption curve of crypto is the next batch of users are not going to come online via trading apps, right? It would have to look more familiar, more friendly, more secure. And that looks more like a neobanking type experience, right? And that looks more like a one-click type experience. That looks more like products we see day in and day out. So if you're in the financial space, it looks like ETFs, etc. And so within our ecosystem, MI4 was launched. It's an index fund product that allows you to get crypto beta exposure with yield. And more recently, with the launch of UR, a super money app, allows users to experience this whole ecosystem together. So here's what I mean. Imagine a world where users would come in via an experience, looks like Revolut on the front end, but all the benefits of DeFi are stripped away on the back end. That's that neo banking super money app experience that we want to architect to onboard the next billion users into our world. And once they are there, They can interface with METH. They can interface with Function BTC. All these transactions will settle on the Mantle network. So that's that super app ecosystem that we had been building year to date. And a lot of that is going into now the Bybit partnership integration and turbocharging this whole mission with the distribution power of Bybit.
Yeah, appreciate all that, Tim. There's a lot of moving parts now under that Mantle umbrella. So that's really helpful just to track kind of everything that you're building on all these different fronts. I want to just kick it over to YZ quickly and give you just an opportunity to introduce yourself, kind of talk about your role at Mantle as well.
Hey guys, YZ here. Been with Mantle and the team with the various ecosystem projects that Tim just mentioned for slightly over a year, and basically have been involved with a lot of these core projects like MI4, MEs, and now UR, the crypto money app that is supposed to really be the interface to allow the next billion users to enter the Mantle ecosystem. So been in the weeds of a lot of these cool projects that we have now. Some of them have been enjoying huge success. For example, MEs now, I believe is the fourth in terms of all the ETH staking, liquid staking projects. And then with MI4 also trending a very, very strong growth over the past few months. So excited to share more or discuss more about these ideas with you guys.
Yeah, guys, there's just a couple of those that I definitely want to dive into more. We've had a podcast before kind of on Mantle Network. We've talked about METH protocol a lot. We've even had a podcast with the Function team before. But a few newer things on the radar here is Mantle Index 4. I think that would be a great one just to quickly talk about that just a little bit more in depth. Like, what is it? What are you doing with that?
Sure. So high level, think of it this way. If you want exposure to crypto today and you are a TradFi person, you can only buy single asset ETFs or ETP type products. We took that experience and said, okay, well, what if you wanted a basket of exposure, a basket of your top assets, so like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana, and what if you wanted yield on top of that? And so MI4 is comprised of BTC, METH, BB-SOL, and SUSDE, a yield-bearing stable. And uniquely, it is not market-weighted because that allows for more upside from non-BTC assets. And I believe this was launched in April, and so it's up rather, I think 70 or some percent year to date. So it's doing quite well. And more importantly, though, it is structured as a traditional fund, which means that anyone in TradFi can invest in it. This isn't something where you have to come on chain, figure out how to invest in a vault and something esoteric that you have to get cross IC. The biggest news here is that it is now definitively the largest tokenized on-chain fund at 200 million, excluding all the money market funds, right? Excluding the BIDLs and ACREDs of the world.
Tim, who is MI4 built for?
Yes, so the genesis of MI4 was actually built for our own treasury. So Mantle Treasury is one of, if not the largest treasury on chain at about $4 billion, depending on where the price of ETH is. And so, actually 20-25% of that is denominated in BTC and ETH already. And so it's quite the treasury reserve asset on chain. It's designed by us for us. And we realized, well, if our treasury being so large wants to have such a well-structured product to think about the long-term longevity of our permanent capital base, well, maybe other treasuries, other folks would like it too. And so we're starting to dogfood it with our own treasury. Our treasury committed up to 400 million. And so we're slowly cranking our way up there.
Guys, let's talk a bit more about UR. First of all, what is it? And then what's the long-term vision behind UR?
UR is a money app built for both the crypto folks and who have, both fiat assets and crypto assets, and that basically is almost everybody, right? But of course, we first started out building this for, firstly, the crypto natives. And a lot of these folks have, when it comes to having a regulated bank account, that is something also that within the crypto space, at least within Web3 wallets, that is not a very common concept, right? At least as of today. There are many crypto cards out there, But what UR offers users is a Swiss-regulated bank account. We have a fintech license with the Swiss regulatory body. And with that comes also a MasterCard debit card that users can easily spend their crypto. So I talked a little bit about a lot of crypto cards out there today. For example, MetaMask, you have the exchange-based cards, but all these, they are merely a way to spend. But UR is a lot more than that. Having a regulated bank account where you get a Swiss IBAN with multi-currency features, having FX abilities that allows you to seamlessly move in between fiat and the crypto world. So imagine today you were to receive, some of you who receive your salary in crypto, let's say USDC, then you're able to easily off-ramp that into fiat and then pay your daily expenses or manage your daily lives. Conversely, if you want to get exposure or opportunities within the digital asset world, right, you can move easily from your bank account and then into crypto through this regulated on and off-ramp channel that is UR. So this is what UR offers. And in terms of the longer-term roadmap or the vision here really is, I think we alluded to earlier in this chat, being that interface where you can access a lot of this cool stuff that is happening around Mantle, not just for the retail users, but also for the institutional users. So we have from the most basic form, savings account type of experience, where you get it from the, let's say, yield-bearing stablecoins. You move it up a little bit. You think about credit cards or credit-based card spending, let's say through almost like an RV type of collateralized debt position. And then you move it further down to exposure to institutional products as an accredited investor of UR. And you may be able to expose yourself to, let's say, MI4 or similar type of asset that is only available to a certain level of investors. So I think in terms of putting all these things together, the UR platform being a regulated body, it's able to really allow users to be exposed to these different suites of product that would otherwise not be possible for the normal crypto platform.
I think a good way to visualize how this synchronizes with the broader Mantle ecosystem is the way we think about it is before, for folks who are millennials, if you wanted to use programs, it was like floppy disks, right? And then here comes Windows 95, packages everything nicely into one user interface for people to navigate personal computing. So we believe that's that moment that we are going after.
And just to extend that a bit further. So when I think of changing my bank, that's a huge friction. So if you guys were to summarize, hey, what is the killer app that's going to pull people over into this kind of new form of neobanking? What do you think it is? Of course, yield is a big one that comes to mind, but curious, what you think is going to move the needle and kind of make people make that jump.
I want to address this question by going back to the really core basics of what we just talked about. And I think it's really on the on and off-ramp side of things. A lot of on-ramp channels, off-ramp channels here today requires either the user to jump through many hoops to get their, let's say, fiat into the bank account. When the size is too huge, you may face the issue of being blocked by your bank, and then having to find an alternative solution in order to go about your daily life. So being a crypto-first money platform that is also regulated by the Swiss FINMA, that essentially allows you to be very confident that any assets coming through your crypto world can safely travel into the fiat world as long as you are KYC verified user. So that is in terms of, I would say, regulated wrapper, right? The second thing is also speed. So a lot of these experiences, as I mentioned earlier, it's very clunky, having to jump through many hoops. So you are also, from a user experience perspective, brings all of this together. Now maybe you can off-ramp simply by 2 clicks from various wallets that you own, right? Obviously, as a crypto user, you have many different wallets. You do that in 2 clicks. And the third thing is in a very cost-efficient manner, right? We all know, for example, the MoonPays of the world, on and off-ramp fees are extremely high. And that's for a very obvious reason because, liquidity is one issue, regulation is another issue. But again, being this hub where we are regulated and then being able to offer this type of UX and product to users because of our expertise within the Mantle ecosystem. I think that what sets us apart. And this is just on the core, right? When you think about the fiat world, that is also the stack of roadmap that we are building towards. So working closely with different banking rails and different card issuance networks. I think that is also one thing, not just on the crypto side that we want to enhance, but also making sure that once, let's say, you off-ramp your crypto, how can you get your money in the traditional world safely and quickly to whichever bank account that you desire? So that's kind of, I think, going back to basic and serving that core purpose.
I think one effort that runs adjacent to integrating crypto native rails with banking rails, there's been a recent announcement around Bybit tightly integrating the MNT token and the Mantle network. So Bybit has such massive distribution. I believe it is the second largest centralized exchange in the world. And so this has to be a massive opportunity for Mantle. I guess, what can you tell us about that? Like, what do we know that is coming for users of Bybit to be able to, again, have access to Mantle?
So I'll take that one. So what has been publicly disclosed today is that MNT will be used in support for Bybit Launchpool products, structured products, there'll be or OTC. But what's more exciting is what is upcoming, right? And just speaking for myself, what is upcoming looks a lot like how BNB is integrated as use cases within the finance ecosystem, right? It's how to use MNT for discounted trading fees, how to use it to qualify for VIP tiers, more denominated trading pairs with MNT, MNT options, just more benefits if you're an MNT holder. And one can only imagine what that means when you take an ecosystem that is already quite robust in terms of products that has been built within it, right? The DeFi assets, etc., with the distribution power of Bybit. So to me, it feels like, where do you think BNB was in its first or second inning? And that feels like where MNT is, except that a lot of the products and the capabilities have been already baked. And now we're just combining kind of the best of both worlds.
One thing, guys, and I don't know that you guys can maybe speak publicly on this, but since this announcement came out, I've seen some threaders on X just kind of putting together some potential moon math on what this could mean for the MNT token. And I got to say, the ranges that I see with this are extremely material in their potential impacts on MNT. And I almost liken it to something like, it reminded me of almost like the Hyperliquid Assistance Fund, like that type of buy pressure. Maybe not that significant, but I think when you look at the FDV of Mantle as it is today and look at some of the projections on how meaningful this Bybit integration could be on the token, it's not that far off. So yeah, I think it's huge on that side of the equation. And then, just huge on just the partnership and what it means to kind of deepen that relationship.
Rumpel Labs is revolutionizing DeFi. Rumpel lets you turn points into profits by tokenizing rewards you can trade from top protocols like Pendle, Athena, Fluid, Symbiotic, and many others. No more waiting for airdrops or TGEs. DeFi's smartest investors are already using Rumpel to unlock instant liquidity and maximize their yields. So join Rumpel today and start spinning your points into gold. Learn more at rumpel.xyz. Spark, one of the leading DeFi protocols, has had a year like no other, deploying $2 billion into RWAs with BlackRock's Biddle and other institutional giants, adding over $1 billion in TVL, and distributing over $9 billion across the DeFi ecosystem. Now, Spark are setting their sights on further global expansion and have introduced the Spark token, which is available on leading centralized exchanges. There's never been a better time to discover Spark, the on-chain capital allocator. Learn more at spark.fi.
Guys, so something I'm a bit unsure of still is Bybit's announced this big, partnership with Mantle, but when does it all start to take effect? Is this something that happens this month? Is this being rolled out over a period of 6 months? I guess, what is the timeline for people to start seeing the impact of this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I will give you 2 points feedback. The first one is one of the things that help us stand out and goes back to our roots as a DAO is that the the leadership has communicated we'll do monthly AMAs to keep a steady stream of clarity and communication to keep folks updated on the progress. And the second is, I will say the Bybit team is best in class at execution. Their speed and ability to align resources, set targets, and implement is just unparalleled. So I would say get excited.
I think for one thing, for example, the MNT collateral ratio for the unified trading account has already been updated as of the last AMA that we spoke about. So these executions are going to come one after another very rapidly. At least this is from a outside-in perspective. Just understanding how Bybit has always been executing. I think there's a lot of exciting stuff coming up.
Yeah, I also want to share one more thing, the way I think about why this is a bit different than Binance with BNB. Obviously, we're in L2, right? And the topic du jour these days is ETH, catching the institutional bid. How ETH is going to be that ultimately the computing layer or the settlement layer for stablecoins, and TradFi will buy into that. I think there's a huge narrative and tailwind there that we will stand to benefit from as Mantle, as an L2, that other folks won't be able to, right? So if you akin it to, look, if NVIDIA is the infrastructure and OpenAI is the application on top, right? In crypto, what? ETH is the infrastructure, and this new ecosystem of Bybit plus Mantle plus UR and the ecosystem products feels like the open AI ecosystem that's burgeoning on top as well.
Speaking of ETH, there's been a lot of talk about ETH Treasury companies lately. Mantle, the Mantle Treasury holds around 102,000 ETH as of this recording. It puts it 8th on the list of strategic ETH reserve entities. If you go to strategicethreserve.xyz, it's kind of like the DeFi pulse, I feel like, of this cycle. So as interest has ramped up in ETH Treasury companies, it's created this massive bid for ETH. And Mantle, as far as I know, was one of the earliest L2s to denominate its treasury in ETH, or at least to hold a massive amount of ETH. Any thoughts to share there? Any opportunity you see ahead for Mantle?
Yeah, I think DATs are interesting, right? When we think about institutional adoption, DATs are actually, it's product market fit, right? Because you skip the ability to, you skip ETFs. ETFs take about 2 years to set up and really distribute through all the requisite channels. Here, you are launching into an existing, usually a shell company operating on NASDAQ. And so as long as you can buy stock with Robinhood, you can buy the DAT, right? We're talking about Robinhood that has $120 billion in AUC. You know, if only 1% of those users move that capital to invest in a DAT, this is net new capital coming to the ecosystem. And so it's funny to think about it. DATs are effectively like wrappers of a token, but, you know, into another chain, which is called the NASDAQ. So I think it's great in terms of going to market. It's great in terms of getting more awareness and adoption, as we've seen now with Ethereum. I think really it comes down to three things to make a DAT successful. The first is asset selection and how you really structure that asset, right? Are we talking about, are you putting in, you know, a major, an alt, locked, unlocked? Is it coming at a discount, non-discount? Second is the structure. We've really seen two. The first is, well, three within RTO, but RTOs have really fallen out of favor. First is a SPAC structure, and the second is the pipe into a shell. SPACs are more commonplace for the larger tokens, so namely BTC, ETH. Not sure if we've seen one for Solana yet. And then the pipe into a shell have been more common for the alts, right? Because speed to market is necessity. And then last is, how do you go to market, right? When you really zoom out, what effectively are you doing? With a DAT, you're essentially, in a way, executing a buyback and burn, right? Because you're taking tokens out of circulation. But you're not burning them, but you're putting them into a public wrapper, which you can actually further monetize. So net, it's actually very beneficial for projects to launch a DAT. That being said, you know, the market will determine whether or not your project needs a DAT and how people will feel about it, right? Whether there's product market fit. If you don't have product market fit on-chain, you probably won't have one when you list it on NASDAQ. The market will probably punish you. And that third piece is, can you go to market with a strong narrative? Who's there? Who's the spokesperson, right? Clearly for Ethereum, it's Tom Lee. He's sucked up all the mind share. He's the, you know, Vitalik 2.0, the second coming of, you know, Jesus for Ethereum. And he's done a phenomenal job, right? He's really gotten ETH back to near the all-time highs. So when folks are thinking about that same concept for alts, who is that individual? Why should people care about this token? But I think in general, it's a great benefit for the ecosystem. Now, the FUD we hear on the other side is, oh, this will blow up like SPACs, this will blow up like Luna. If you really dig in and put on a TradFi hat, most of these are structured with equity, not debt. So, we won't get that cascading effect. I think what we'll see is when these start inevitably trading at a discount to MNAV or to NAV, because when the bear market hits, how do you defend that position, right? For ETH, because there's native stake, you're generating yield. Hopefully you've generated enough yield in cash to buy back your stock share price if it ever goes at a discount. That being said, that isn't the case for all alts. And the question is, you might not have enough to really defend your position. But I think, what's going to get really interesting over the next maybe 1 or 2 quarters is to see how the DATs play out. Where do we hit saturation? What do market dynamics look like? Who really comes out on top? What other new interesting financial engineering do we see in having crypto companies hit mainstream, be it TradFi? And then, the opposite side of that curve, which is what happens when things start falling apart. Who can actually weather the bear market and come out unscathed or, surviving after that. So that's our take on DATs. I think it's a very interesting time this cycle. That's institutional adoption, right? Institutional adoption wasn't ETFs, it wasn't people coming on chain, it's DATs.
Tim, you have, I believe it's a pinned tweet. It's a fairly bullish tweet. Looks like a talk you gave in Cannes, and it ties into what you were just talking about. But you have this road to 80K ETH prediction. I'm sure some of what you just spoke on kind of ties into that, but what else are you seeing that could take ETH to those kind of prices?
Yeah, it's funny. So I gave that talk early July, right before the whole Ethereum DATs gone full swing. So I guess just good timing. And at that time, Tom Lee was calling for 16,000, maybe 20,000 ETH. I came off more bullish. A lot of the 80,000, I have to give credit to the guys at Etherealize. They've done a lot of the math behind how to get to that number. And really, it's a function of how do you view ETH as an asset in the broader ecosystem, right? The 80,000 is backed into if you view it as a productive asset similar to like a digital oil of sorts. And so, highly recommend ETH Digital Oil. I think .com is the site. They have a really good dissertation on walking you through the math there and the potential use cases and future upside of Ethereum. I think what people we haven't talked about with respect to that is, look, let's just use a proxy test, right? My title was Treasuries, TradFi, and Trump. Where does Trump come in, right? What has Trump done very well? If you have a successful business, what are the successful businesses in TradFi? Sorry, in crypto, it's exchanges, it's stable coins, it's and I forget there's one more in there, right? And he's copied every single one of them because they make money. So the proxy is, if he starts building Ethereum DAT, then we kind of know we made it. So that's something to look out for.
Hey folks, I want to tell you about our sponsor, GEARBOX, the protocol that reimagines on-chain lending. With GEARBOX, you can access 10x credit across DeFi or lend for passive yields with single asset deposits and no impermanent loss. Users can access leverage to margin trade, stake, farm, and more. To learn more about GEARBOX, go to gearbox.fi. Puffer Institutional delivers secure, high-yield Ethereum staking built for institutions with battle-tested security, granular access controls, and the ability to boost APY by securing multiple AVSs. Puffer gives institutions full control and optimized returns. Puffer is also behind the Unify-based rollup, aiming to transform Ethereum's future in a world where all L2s are working together. To learn more, go to institutional.puffer.fi. Would Mantle ever consider doing a DAT for the MNT token? It feels like an obvious move, given the sentiment in the market and the reaction, I think, to the success of these ETH Treasury companies.
Can't comment on that at this time. But one thing to note is, look, one of the reasons why, I feel that this integration is taking place today is because we operate in a market with much more clarity around regulations, right? And I think both Bybit and Mantle have done everything above board to make sure that If there's something worth doing, one, it is for the long term, and two, we do it as above board as possible. And so with these DATs, we have seen some of these guys cut corners in terms of how they structure and go to market. And so, for everybody out there, definitely be wary of that.
I think a good final question to wrap up on is, why Mantle? There's a lot of options available. There's a lot to access in terms of L2s, DeFi, neobanking apps. Let's talk again, why Mantle?
I think that's a very important question, probably one of the most important questions to ask, right? I think being one of the largest, if not the largest DAO with the deep treasury strength, that is kind of like the foundation that Mantle has always been building on. And we obviously already have also proved through, for example, MI4 about what's possible through strategic capital flows, right? And when it comes to the retail side of things, or UR, which we talked about earlier, that is about bringing the next wave of users on chain. And being this blockchain for banking, blockchain for finance, looking ahead in the next wave, in the next generation, I think Mantle has done a lot from a chain or technology perspective to just enable a lot of these things, right? So MI4, for example, is built or integrated on Mantle Network. You are, as a money app, all the transactions, be it card spending, bank transfers, these are all things that would also rest on Mantle Network. So these are things, I think from a use case perspective, it's very clear, right? A lot of the networks, the protocols out there that we see are pretty much general purpose, but Mantle has taken a very different stance here. We understand what we are trying to achieve, which we have spoken to a large length today, and we build the chain, the protocol to suit these purposes, right? So that's, I think, on the most foundational level. Of course, we also talked about, working closely with Bybit, having not just a focus on retail, but also making sure that institutional flows are viable on Mantle chain, and then having the partnership not just within the original Mantle ecosystem, but now broadened with Bybit. I think that's kind of like an all-in-one reason as to why Mantle is something to look out for.
Well, on that note, this is a great place for us to wrap up, guys. So I want to remind our listeners they can learn more about Mantle by going to mantle.xyz. They should follow Mantle_official on X. Follow Tim's account. It's TX0ZZ. And then YZ's, we'll flash it on screen here, and then we'll put it into the show notes. But be sure to follow both of them. Again, great accounts to follow for updates on Mantle. Guys, thank you so much for coming on. It's good to get this update on all that's happening with Mantle, because Mantle was one of the earlier L2s I started using in terms of DeFi. We've come a long way. And now with its own unique DeFi ecosystem, there's a lot to take advantage of there. There's a lot to access. So hopefully this is a great catch up for listeners. Thanks everyone for tuning in. To stay up to date with future episodes, plus get expert tips, strategies, and exclusive content, subscribe to our free newsletter at the-edge.xyz.